catch me howling at the moon.
What's up guys, and welcome back to Park Pros. So there's this guy named Coaster Studios. I don't know, you might have heard of him before. And a little while back, he posted this video about Michigan's adventure titled Visiting the Worst Cedar Fair Park. In this video, Taylor and company basically show up to Michigan's adventure, find out that Shivering Timbers was closed because of an accident, and then spend the rest of the video saying virtually nothing nice about the park, calling it one of the worst theme park days they've ever had. And for years of being an enthusiast, I've heard basically nothing but how Michigan's adventure was the red-headed stepchild of the Cedar Fair chain. So I figured, I live in Chicago just 3 hours away and I have a Cedar Fair Platinum Pass, and this is really the last decent-sized park in the Midwest I haven't been to. Why not go check out this dump for myself and pick up some credits? So I did, and I really liked it. Now this video isn't meant to throw shade at Taylor or really anyone else that dislikes Michigan's adventure. People are allowed to have good and bad days at parks and form their opinions based on those experiences, especially when it comes to a smaller park like this, which is way out of the way for most people. But I think this park has been receiving a lot of unwarranted hate for years, and I'm just here to set the record straight. Now, a few disclosures before I go ahead and tell you just how awesome Michigan's adventure is. First, I went ahead and got Fastlane on my visit, which wasn't the plan going in, but I forgot that I was losing an hour crossing time zones, and I accidentally showed up to the park an hour after opening to be greeted by this line at Shivering Timbers. So yeah, I paid up just to make sure that I got everything done, just in case I hated the park and never wanted to come back. And at $55, which I believe is cheaper than most other Cedar Fair parks, it ended up being well worth the money, and I would highly recommend. My second disclosure is that I actually got to ride Shivering Timbers on this visit. I wasn't on some extended road trip with a tight schedule, so I had the luxury of calling the park the day before just to ensure that their headlining coaster would be open. The reason that I bring that up is because Taylor said in his video that he felt they still would have had the same negative opinions about Michigan's adventure regardless if Shivering Timbers had been running that day. And from my one experience at this park, I genuinely believe that I still would have really enjoyed my day at Michigan's adventure, even if I showed up to find that Shivering Timbers was closed. I found this park to have so many redeeming qualities outside of their star attraction, so I just wanted to start this video by telling you the things that I loved about Michigan's adventure besides just Shivering Timbers. First of all, this park setting is top tier. It's in a beautiful, albeit difficult part of the country to get to, and it literally feels like the park was carved out of a forest. The park is surrounded by trees and foliage, and inside the park they do a tremendous job with their landscaping. And obviously you have the lake in the middle of the park, which is a great centerpiece and creates some really nice scenery for rides like Wolverine Wildcat and Thunderhawk. I found this park to just be flat out beautiful. Second, Michigan's adventure had so many cool and unique attractions to offer that I didn't even have time for in my full 7 hours at the park. For example, you remember those swan boats from Roller Coaster Tycoon? Yeah, Michigan's adventure has those. And they're not even an upcharge attraction, you can just walk right on. And they actually let you go out surprisingly far into the lake. Another example, there's this mini golf course right on the lake, which I'm also assuming isn't an upcharge attraction. They also have this cool looking rapids ride, which had a lot of really good theming and looked like it had a lot of fun dips and speed throughout. And it's literally named Grand Rapids, which I think is pretty clever. And lastly, they had this beer garden with a patio that sits right on the lake. Am I in heaven? Michigan's adventure is kind of designed in this awkward horseshoe layout that goes around the lake, with Shivering Timbers being one dead end of the horseshoe and Thunderhawk being the other dead end, but they have this little train that is constantly running and takes you between the two dead ends in less than 5 minutes. It's literally so convenient. Now I know it's the roller coasters that everybody cares about, and people love to make fun of this park's lineup, so let's do a quick lightning round of my opinions on the coasters of Michigan's adventure. Now obviously I'm gonna start with Shivering Timbers because when most people think of Michigan's adventure, they really only think of this ride, and for good reason. But I do want to save my complete thoughts for a separate video because this ride is worthy of its own review. But I'll leave my thoughts at this for now. I've been on 324 roller coasters at the time of this video being recorded, and Shivering Timbers is unquestionably in my top 3 wooden coasters alongside El Toro and Voyage. and I'm not sure that it's number 3. It has a nearly perfect layout in my opinion, it has next level airtime, and it's unquestionably a world-class wooden coaster. My second favorite at the park was Shivering Timbers' next door neighbor, the Din Wooden Coaster Wolverine Wildcat. It's got a really nice airtime based layout, and it wasn't rough or janky at all. If I had more time at the park, I definitely would have given this another ride or two, because I really enjoyed it. The third best coaster at the park was Thunderhawk, a Vekoma SLC and the park's newest roller coaster, which was relocated from Geauga Lake in 2008. Now I've only been on a handful of SLCs to date, but this one was my favorite. The transitions were really smooth, there was no headbanging, and it was enjoyably intense. The new paint scheme also looks really good. After those 3 coasters, there's a bit of a drop off. And by a bit, I mean a pretty massive drop off. You have Mad Mouse, which is one of the 3 Arrow Wild Mouse models left in existence. And in my opinion, the Arrows are the best Wild Mouse models, just because the second half has pretty wild pacing and you get some actual airtime on some of these hills and drops. Next up, you have the park's Arrow named Corkscrew. This is the most basic model with the short drop, turn, and then double corkscrew, which is obviously a pretty dull ride, but it had no headbanging, which I appreciated. And then finally, you have the 2 kiddie coasters that are now located right next to each other. Zack Zoomer, which is the PTC family wooden coaster, and then Woodstock Express, which is a Chance Rides Big Dipper. These both serve their purpose as well as stepping stone coasters, and I really like that they're close by each other. And speaking of that, the park's brand new Camp Snoopy area looks great. Cedar Fair always does a really good job with their kids sections, but with this one being brand new, it was one of the nicer ones I've seen. In terms of operation, even though I had a fast lane, from what I could tell, I thought the crews were doing a pretty good job of getting trains out and keeping the lines moving. It is worth noting that rides like Corkscrew, Wolverine Wildcat, and Zack Zoomer do run one train, which is obviously not ideal, but I don't think this park's attendance really warrants running more than one train on those rides anyways. Shivering Timbers was also running one train, but that's just temporary because of the accident that happened earlier this summer. A side note, the fast lane line dumps you right in Shivering Timbers station, which allowed me to get a ton of rides despite it running one train and having pretty long lines all day. Another random side note, the park's log flume was closed all day, I'm assuming because of staffing issues, and then randomly started testing like an hour and a half before the park closed, and they actually ended up opening the ride with like 45 minutes left till close. How many other parks would do that? In terms of ride operations and interactions with employees, I had nothing but pleasant and friendly experiences during this visit. So let's talk about the question you're probably all asking at this point in the video. Is Michigan's Adventure actually the worst Cedar Fair park? And my answer is, it depends how you look at it. At this point, I've been to every Cedar Fair park besides California's Great America and Canada's Wonderland, so I think I have a pretty good feel for what these parks offer. Does Michigan's Adventure have the worst overall coaster lineup in the Cedar Fair chain? Yeah, probably. I really enjoyed both Wolverine Wildcat and Thunderhawk, but there's no denying there's a pretty steep drop off after that. And if those 2 rides aren't your cup of tea, you're down to basically just Shivering Timbers. But you also have to keep in mind that this park's received just one new coaster since 1999, and that was a relocated SLC. It's also worth considering that Shivering Timbers, in my opinion, is better than any coaster at Dorney, Valleyfair, Worlds of Fun, Knott's, and probably even Kings Island. Having an elite coaster like Shivering Timbers can really elevate your lineup, and because of that, I don't think the gap between Michigan's Adventure's lineup and the lineups of the other low-tier Cedar Fair parks is really that drastic. And to get back to the original question, just because Michigan's Adventure might have the worst ride lineup in the chain doesn't automatically make it the worst park in every other category. In terms of park setting and beauty, Michigan's Adventure is definitely towards the top of the chain. And I thought most of the buildings, queues, and landscaping throughout the park was extremely well kept. Overall, I found this park to just be a really pleasant place to be, which for me is half the battle in having an enjoyable park experience. Which is why it's such a shame that Cedar Fair won't invest in this park. I'm not sure how much of the surrounding area Michigan's Adventure owns, but there is so much land around this park to expand. And Cedar Fair has made it more than clear for 2 decades now that they're not willing to invest in this park. And can you really blame them? Muskegon's population is only about 38,000, and this park is still a solid 45 minutes away from Grand Rapids, which ranks just 123rd in terms of population in the US. But also, on the flip side, is that really a valid excuse anymore? Parks like Silver Dollar City and Holiday World are in the middle of nowhere, yet they thrive because the investments their owners put into them draw people from all over the country. I could ramble on for days about all the potential this park has, but those thoughts are probably best served for a video of its own. So let me sum up my thoughts on my visit to Michigan's Adventure. When you come into a park visit with the expectation that this is going to be the worst park in the chain, it's obviously not going to be hard for the park to beat those expectations. But I genuinely did enjoy every aspect of my visit to Michigan's Adventure. The park is well kept, it has a beautiful setting, and they have a world-class wooden coaster in Shivering Timbers. Could they use a better coaster lineup? Sure. But for me, I value other things a park brings to the table besides just how many credits they have. If you're questioning going out of your way to make a stop at this park on a trip, I'm telling you, I think it's worth it. That's it for today's video. If you've made it this far, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, me and fellow YouTuber Coaster John do a show called The Coaster Rundown where we break down the biggest news in the amusement industry on a weekly basis. So if you haven't yet, go check those out. I'll leave the links in the description. Thank you guys for checking out the video, and we'll see you all next time.